All right, welcome to today's conversation on the Awakening Her Show. I'm so excited today to be diving into a really deep and profound conversation with one of my very good friends and also relationship coach and expert. So, let me do a proper introduction before we start diving into this conversation that I know is going to be really transformational for everyone listening. It has been for me, and I'll dive a little bit into that in a sec. So based out of Canada, Gloria Zhang is a renowned relationship coach, best-selling author, and former psychotherapist known for her signature style of translating esoteric ideas into everyday wisdom. Gloria hosts a global sensation, the Inner Child podcast, a self-help series which has captivated audiences across the globe, accumulating almost 2 million downloads. Gloria enjoys a quiet life with her life partner, taking pleasure in the simple joys of coffee and anime. So, the reason why I'm so excited to have you here today, Gloria, is because, first of all, you've become a really good friend of mine and you have an incredible book. And I remember when I started reading this book, I was like, oh, this is like really good stuff. And I'm someone, I've done a lot of trauma work, I've done a lot of inner work. And I was like, this is so useful. So, anyone who's watching
Mm.
right now or listening, her book is called A Woman's Guide to Inner Child Healing, and it's really powerful. But the real reason I wanted to have you here is because you have a way of really breaking things down to make it so simple for women who are struggling in relationship to see patterns, see dynamics, and also like break through these programmings that we have and these patterns that we have. And after having you at the Awakening Her Summit just a few months ago, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to talk about this on the show.
Well, thank you, Deidre. Yeah, I love Deidre with all my heart. She was one of my first friends I made in Vancouver, and I'm so excited for you and this show, and I'm just really pumped for everything that you're doing this year. So, yay.
Thank you. So, Gloria, I'd love to hear a little bit about you help women do the inner child healing. You have an incredible podcast. What got you into this work of being a relationship coach? Like, I see your posts on social media. You have like this amazing partner. He gives you princess treatment, all the things. And people might be like, you know what? You have the perfect relationship. But where were you before this?
Mm.
And what got you to this point?
What a great question. Yeah, so when I usually introduce myself, I say, "Hi, I'm Gloria. I ruined all my relationships for 10 years." That's sort of my tagline,
I love
and
it.
it is very much the reason I went into this. So these days, people know me as the inner child therapist, and I do a lot of work around that. But when it comes to inner child trauma, the most common way that it manifests in people's lives is through our intimate relationships, which makes a lot of sense because our romantic relationships closely mirrors our parental relationships and the way that we grew up. And so what happened was I just couldn't get my shit together for pretty much my whole life. I was the rebound girl. I was chasing after guys who didn't want to commit to me. I felt really addicted to certain types of men that gave me like a toxic kind of love. And I couldn't get out of it. And I was a therapist, right? So I should know this stuff. And I was helping all my clients work through their mental health issues. And I couldn't figure out why, even though I knew all the stuff, I was still repeating these patterns in my relationships. And I didn't know why. So, being the high achiever I am, I decided that I got to figure this out because up until recently, my big life goal was I'm going to get married, I'm going to have kids, I'm going to meet my Prince Charming, and that's going to be my happy ending, right? I was that was just my laser focus. And when I stumbled upon the world of inner child work, and I thought, you know what? I can combine my roots in trauma healing and merge that with dating and relationship skills because that's a crossover I haven't really seen, at least when I was younger. And I ended up piecing those two together and actually coming up with a modality, and it worked. And literally 4 months later, right after I had done the work, I actually attracted my current partner, Andrew. So we are getting married later this year. And I've been using this modality ever since for the past many, many years with women that I work with. And it's been awesome. So that's basically my backstory.
I love it. And it's so interesting because so much of what we teach usually comes from a place of like deep struggle, deep pain, deep like, how do I figure
Yes.
this out? And then we figure it out and we're like, everyone needs to know this. We got to megaphone it to the universe.
Right.
So love that. So one of the things that you shared on before, yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me from your conversation that you had with at the Awakening Her Summit was on some statistics, and also like there's this belief system, and I've had it too, of like all men are this way, or there's no good men out there,
Yes.
or there's a pattern that we see, and I say we as in, well, I was seeing it. I was experiencing it. And I one thing that really shifted for me actually very recently in my relationship now is a lot of the wounding or challenges that I was facing were actually connected to, yeah, childhood and trauma, but also a story that I was
Yes.
so used to playing and replaying that until
Mhm.
I really caught how I was showing up in the dynamic, I couldn't break that. And that was a huge awakening in my relationship. But I'd love to hear a little bit about three different types of people and relationships, and
Yeah.
for you to share a bit on that, because I just, people from the summit were just like, oh, this was so powerful. And yeah,
Oh, I'm glad to hear. Yeah, I mean, so most of my clients do date men, although that's not the case across the board. So I do a lot of work with helping people see the truth when it comes to our stories about men. So men are pigs, all men cheat, da 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 da, all men are narcissists. I hear this ad nauseum on a daily basis. And I mean, I grew up with that too. Growing up for me, I didn't have a single example of a healthy relationship on either side of my family, right?
mm,
My parents had issues. In my extended family, there was cheating going on. I had relatives go to jail, right? Like alcoholism, like just crazy shit across the board. So I just we can't blame ourselves for holding these beliefs because we grew up and we're just parroting back what we've absorbed and learned from other people. And when we become adults, we may enter a group of friends that are also kind of creating this echo chamber of beliefs.
mm,
So men are pigs, men don't want to commit, men are narcissists. Well, the statistics show us just the opposite of that because in the US alone, 6,000 couples get married every single day. And those are the most recent statistics. All right. So men are committing, men are getting married. It's happening everywhere. It's just not happening to you for some reason. And it's not because of the men, it's because of the ones that you're choosing. All men are
mm,
narcissists. We hear that all the time, right?
yeah,
Well, actually, numbers do show that only about 1 to 5% of the population would actually fall under a clinical diagnosis of having narcissistic personality disorder. It's a
mm,
very, very small amount, right? And even if you want to say, oh, well, there's a spectrum. Well, there's only a spectrum beyond that 1 to 5%. It's really not that much.
mm,
Oh, well, all men are commitment phobes, all men are avoided. Well, actually, we also know that in across all boards, right, across all cultures around the world, on average, 40 to 50% of the population has a secure attachment style, meaning that their attachment style allows them to be comfortable in relation or not, right? So they're comfortable being in relation to others. They're comfortable being in intimacy.
Can I
So
ask
here we
a
are.
question? Oh, sorry. I go ahead. I have
Yeah.
a question for this, but continue.
Yeah.
So the
It
question
is a
was, oh, go ahead.
yeah.
I'm just like, I have a
Oh no.
question. And
Yeah. Go
so
for it.
could it be because this narcissist thing is real, as in I've heard so many people talk about this person's a narcissist, that person's a narcissist. And what I feel, and I'd love to hear your reflection on this, is that person a narcissist, or are you potentially not respecting their boundaries or understanding their needs? Could that be part of
Ah.
it too?
Hmm.
Because, of course, we're going to think someone's a narcissist if they're not doing exactly what we want and we're not meeting our own needs and we're codependent. And that person's just like, no, I need to work. I need to take care of
Hmm.
myself. I can't do everything that you want.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just break that down if that's okay. I know I interrupted you, but I'm like, we need to talk about this.
Yes. Very few people actually understand what the true definition of narcissist is. And it really is a cluster of personality traits, right? And a lot of narcissism stems from their own trauma. But it's very true. I hear this word just being thrown out. You just met someone. Oh, they don't want to commit to you. They don't want to talk to you. Oh, they're a narcissist, right? Oh, you just met someone. Oh, they're talking a lot about their job. They're a narcissist. Well, are they really? So, what I find that is more helpful than trying to assign labels onto people, it doesn't matter whether or not they're a narcissist. It's more about why are you entertaining people who can't meet your needs? Or why do you keep choosing people who fall under this category of not being able to meet your needs, right? For whatever reason. So
Yeah.
that's the real question. I mean, we can go down multiple rabbit holes trying to analyze other people of why is he doing this? Why is he? It doesn't matter to me
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day
Mm-hmm.
because that's not going to lead right to a better relationship. We can
Right.
understand why, but at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, the capital T truth is that you have a pattern
Mm-hmm.
with these types of men. You have a pattern attracting these types of dynamics in relationships. And that's what we need to focus on.
I love this for multiple reasons. First, it's like accountability for like, okay, why am I choosing someone or something that's not in alignment with what I truly desire? The next piece that I'm hearing too is not only why am I doing that, but how can I get out of victim? I feel like a lot of the time when I hear people talk about, oh, I keep dating this narcissist or whatever the story is, if there's an element of being a victim, and that victimhood could come from childhood, the story that's being played out. And then the next level is I just want to share a quick story here because it just popped up as we were speaking, and it might be valuable to kind of break some of this down as we kind of go through this. There was someone that I dated years and years ago, and I remember trying to establish boundaries with this person, and they were very anxious. And I don't consider myself an avoidant. I don't know. I can kind of maybe kind of go between all three, like a little bit avoidant, a
Yeah.
little bit anxious, depending on who I'm in relationship with and all of that, right? And I just remember in this relationship having agreements around boundaries. I was finishing writing my book. I had all these things. The
Mm,
person was like, yeah, no problem. I'll give you space and time during the day to focus on your book. All these promises when we were spending time together. But then when we were actually spending time together, the person wanted all of my time. And when I would try to establish
yeah.
a boundary or an agreement that we previously had, this person would get really upset and call me a narcissist. And I was like, whoa.
Oh my.
Yeah. And so the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I've learned a lot about myself in relationship, but also I just thought maybe the flip side of it, if a woman's like, oh, this man is a narcissist, maybe he's just established
Mm,
boundaries and you have anxious attachment, and
right.
then you're not actually looking at yourself. So how does it play in for anxious attachments when
Hmm.
they're with someone who has good boundaries, and how could they potentially work together? I just love to break this down because I feel like that's probably a lot of people saying, I'm with a narcissist.
Yeah.
This person's
Hmm.
actually just trying to establish boundaries so that they can be in good
Yeah.
relationship with you. And that's why the relationship needed to end for me, because I was like, this person is just getting upset after we make agreements and boundaries. And it was, yeah, it was very, it was challenging because I'm like, I can't get anything done with this person around. And then I'm the bad person. And it was like, it was a lot. It
Yeah.
was a first experience
It's
of
not the vibe.
no, it wasn't. I
No.
felt guilty for trying to work during the day. I'm like,
Yeah, I've definitely dated people like that before. So
okay,
you raise a very good point with the boundaries. So since I know that your audience is a little bit more woo-woo, maybe we can expand the topic there.
yeah.
So on when we talk about attachment styles, what it really energetically, it's really just polarities that we're operating from, right? So we have anxious on one side of the spectrum, and then we have avoidant. And
Mhm,
so there's a term for this called the pursuer distancer relationship, right? And so what Deidre says is absolutely true. A lot of people don't know this, but we can actually change attachment style depending on the relationship. And it's really just trying to adjust where our boundaries are. So if an anxiously attached person is is coming out with a lot of energy of I need more, I need more, I need more, then naturally they actually gravitate towards avoidance, right? Or this energetic match occurs where they're actually drawn to avoidance because they're playing out that story of more, more, more. So I'm going to pull away, right? More, more, more. I'm going to pull away. And you're right, there are no boundaries. Now, on the flip side, the avoidance, they're on the opposite side of the spectrum where they're closed off to that connection, right? So their boundaries are too much, if you want to put it that way,
mhm,
right? So we have no boundaries, and then we have too much boundaries, and those are the polarities that
mhm,
we're working through when we look at attachment style. Now, good boundaries are the person who are kind of smack dab in the middle, right? They have that equilibrium of a balance between you and me. I know where the separation is between you and me. Deidre, I think you have great boundaries. So I do think you are generally secure. So yeah, really attachment styles are all about how comfortable we are with the distance between you and me in the relationship. Like where do you end and I start? Right? And that can look different on the day to day.
mhm. And the beautiful thing about this too is really being in tune with yourself. And when there's a lot of childhood trauma sometimes and codependency that can develop potentially in your upbringing, I'm not sure, but definitely in mine, it's there's this feeling responsible for other people's state of being. That's something that I used to struggle with a lot of like, oh, if this person's upset, I need to like go and rescue
Hmm.
them. And that's where I realized in that relationship that I was mentioning earlier that I'm like, oh, this can't work because I'm going to continue to abandon my own self in order to just manage that person's emotions. And so, what are some tools? I don't. I hope we're not off track a little bit with my questions. I like interrupted you partway through. So I'm like, I have
No
a
worries.
question.
It's all good.
But what are some tools that people can, or steps that people can take who are feeling anxiously attached, who might be like, I might be with a narcissist, I might not be?
Mhm.
What are some tools or some steps that those people can take that are feeling anxious or like they're never getting enough and to start to feel a little bit more regulated in their system and more
Mhm.
connected to themselves?
Yeah, it's a tough place to be, right?
Mhm.
So when we're in that position of being codependent or feeling like we're almost addicted to that person, it can make us feel very powerless, right? And out of control. So, in terms of tools, I developed this model called Feel, Heal, and Attract, which kind of helps people pinpoint what tool they're needing in the moment. So there's kind of a trifecta layer of what's going on. So feel is all about our emotions. when we are feeling dysregulated in relation, right? So that's the anxiety, the fear of abandonment, all of these big feelings that come up. Heal is all about soothing the inner child, right? So reconnecting and reparenting that inner girl that is experiencing these big emotions like the abandonment, anxiety. And the third one is attract. And that's really just getting in rooms with the right people, right? So none of these tools are going to work if we keep choosing the wrong people who are just going to keep bringing up the same wounds over and over. So that's feel, heal, and attract. I would say if I were to just give any sort of general tip to anyone who is struggling with all three of these, is always going back to the inner child first, right? So when we're feeling this triggered, and I say this all the time, there are very few adult problems that aren't somehow rooted in some sort of childhood wound that is actually just coming up again. So if you're feeling that way, that this guy isn't choosing me, this guy is mistreating me, I would really question that and go back to the inner child and say, when was the first time I have ever felt that way? And I can guarantee you that was not the first time. It was maybe your dad at age 6 or your brother at age 8, right? Or mom. There's always something more ancient that we're able to trace back these patterns to. And that's the place that we need to start with.
I love that. And it's just so powerful to really look at the patterns of our life, the stories that we've told ourselves. One of the things that happened for me when I moved in with my partner was I had this moment where I started crying. And it was probably about a month
Yeah.
in. And I was crying because I felt like a sense of like, oh, my nervous system is calm and I don't have to tell myself an old story anymore. And when I talk, for those of you that are listening, where you're like, what is the old story? The old story was like, I'm not worthy of a man. No one's ever gonna love me or stay with me. And in past relationships, there was betrayal and a lot of stuff. And I was codependent in the way of where I would stay longer than I should have or needed
Mm,
to. And I would take on other people's emotions as my own. And that was a survival mechanism from childhood. So I've really had to do inner work on healing that and going into that state of feeling really calm was really beautiful. But then also I started to find problems with it because I'm like, oh no,
mm.
I'm not going to be safe if I'm calm. And then I went through this whole thing where I was like, I'm losing my identity, and I wasn't. But I was creating issues that weren't there. And when I had this big shift not too long ago, I was like, wow, this is because I'm used to that feeling. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit, like this might be really personal for you and share what you feel comfortable sharing, but what was your pattern? Because what was your pattern
Mm,
before? Like, how did you show up in relationship? What were some of the stories or dynamics, the roles that you played in those dynamics that you
mm.
had to heal before attracting your partner today? Because this is like,
Oh
this is where
gosh.
the audience
Yeah.
listeners are going to be like, "Oh wow, like she's there and I'm where she was," and like so
I got you. I think I got some of your text messages during that time period.
definitely, definitely. Yeah.
I
My
I
go-to, you're one of
totally
my
get it.
go-to sisters.
Yeah. Sister from another
Yeah,
mister.
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I've I've gone into these holes of just psychoanalyzing myself, right? Like, what is going on? Why does this keep happening? So, what I know about myself, and I mean, I am or was a high achieving woman. I have a lot of experience with various industries of high achieving women I work with. And it's the same, it's actually the same belief amongst everyone. The reason why high achieving women struggle in relationships is that we have been conditioned to believe that love is supposed to feel hard. That's a complete sentence right there.
Mhm.
Everything boils down from that. It was the same thing for me. That love role model to me was always so complicated, and it was such a struggle, and that it's hard to love others. It's hard for me to be loved. There was so much struggle and chaos around it, right? So I really can relate when we're experiencing peace for the first time and now we want to start some drama, right? Like now it's starting to feel uncomfortable. And that's why it can feel so uncomfortable being peaceful in a relationship, because suddenly it's not hard anymore. I mean, I think about my own high achieving personality. Like, why did I become that way? Well, it's because being a high achiever, it gave me a societally approved outlet to experience chaos.
Mm,
Because in my business, I could be hustling 24/7, and then society is going to give me a pat on the back and say, here's an award, Gloria. Good job. You did great.
mhm,
Right. And it reinforces this chaos that I was feeling inside. And it gives me a substitute for love, at least for a little while. Right. If things don't work out with this guy, at least I can run back and do my work and do all these, have all these accomplishments, and I can receive love through accomplishments. But then you try taking that personality and fitting that into an intimate relationship, and it doesn't work. Right? Like you can't effort yourself into vulnerability.
no.
Like it's it's like the opposite of our wiring.
Mhm,
Suddenly things need to be easy. Things need to feel easy in
mhm,
order for that relationship to work. And that actually that's harder than all the hustle.
mhm,
Right? And so I absolutely had a pattern of feeling really turned off by nice guys for a while, because like, oh, they feel like a brother, or oh, I just don't feel a spark, right? They don't challenge me, like all of these beliefs. But I'm gonna chase after this guy that lives like in some place where he never has time for me, right? Like he's never gonna make time for me. That's okay. I'm just gonna be a good little girl and try to win his affection. All of this, right? All of this chaos, all this work. And it's really that programming our beliefs and who we are in relation to be able to hold that space for the peace. And for anyone listening, the peace will feel good, but you have to be able to get through that messy middle first of adjusting your nervous system. So
mhm,
that's a lot of the work I do, is helping people adjust their nervous system, right? So that
mhm,
they can receive that soft landing place that they really want in relationships.
mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
know if I answered your question. I went
you
off the rails there.
you totally did. It was perfect. And it's so interesting because that in between messy piece feels really uncomfortable. I went through it not too long ago. And it felt like horrible. I was like, this is crazy, all this stuff. And it was just because can I really have that? Does that really exist? And I feel like a lot of people, now that I'm in this position that I'm in, feel like a lot of people sabotage their good relationships when that interrupt or that messy in between space happens, because there's so much going on internally, right? So a
Mm-hmm.
couple of things that I got from what you were saying just there is it's normal,
Yeah.
it's messy, it's uncomfortable, and if you can move through it and regulate your nervous system and get support by the right people like yourself, either by reading your book and doing the exercises, your podcast, or working with you in one of your containers, you can get over it and that it's normal. Because I feel like a lot of these conversations aren't being had in a bigger way. And what I mean by that is a lot of the time, and this can be because of movies, the media, and all of
Yeah.
there's this storyline around if you're with the right person, you're going to know right away, you're going to have sparks, it's going to be perfect. And then if there's like an interrupt or a challenge or whatever happened, oh, well, that you should just leave right away versus staying.
Mm-hmm.
So, on that note, how do you know if you're in a relationship where you can work it out and potentially should work it out with the person versus, hey, it's time to leave. How do you know when you're working with someone, let's say they're in one of your programs and they're like, I'm going through this period. How do you know if there's that nervous system stuff going on and they have to regulate and
Yes.
work on themselves with their partner, or if it's time to exit?
Hmm. Yeah, such great. I really love what you said before about the Hollywood movies and how there's this idea that it's supposed to feel like love at first sight. I'll just say one quick thing about that is art imitates life, right? So if you grew up in a healthy environment and you only have 1 hour to make a movie to portray a relationship, it in that 1 hour art form, it really does feel like magic and fireworks. And it makes sense the same way that Picasso's art depicts a woman, but that's not how it actually looks like, right? And so if we don't know what love actually feels like, we can interpret art too literally and say, oh, it should be exactly like in the movies. But we have to understand that that's art. So that's one thing I would say about that. But in terms of in relationship, right? So I know what you're saying, and it's the difficulty a lot of women experiences that when they're triggered by a guy, for example, they can't tell if it's you or if it's me, right? Like, is this a sign that you're toxic or is this me being toxic, projecting something
Mm,
on the person? So the truth is, at the beginning, you really don't know because that instinctive reaction feels it actually feels exactly the same, right?
mm,
I've never been able to tell the difference until I learned to take a pause after I feel that sensation. So, what most people do is they feel a bad feeling and they make a decision right away. Like,
mhm,
I feel bad, so I'm going to cut you off, or I feel bad, I'm going to leave this date. And you don't allow the information from their behavior to either confirm or deny what you're feeling. And so I'm with you on that. I think the key here that I see at least is to give the situation a chance to play out so that based on that feedback, you then learn what that gut feeling really was. So
mm,
let's say a guy he says something ambiguous to me, like he's like, oh, can we reschedule our date? And my first thought is ding ding ding, alarm bell, oh my god, he's ghosting me, oh my god, he's pulling away. But I don't know that
mhm,
until I see the rest of his behavior, and that feeling is going to be the same whether it's me or him. If I just cut things off right away, then I'm denying myself of the opportunity to learn something about me,
mm,
right? But if I stay present and I check in and say, okay, yeah, I might be able to reschedule, right? Can we communicate about what's going on? And let's say he says, like, oh, my dog just passed away, right? And or something. Or he says, oh, I'm just not feeling it.
mhm.
Well, now you have information to validate where those feelings are coming from,
Mm. This
right?
is so powerful because I feel like in the world that we live in right now, everything's instant gratification. We want to know now and we want to protect our egos because our ego is there to protect us. But what I'm really hearing is curiosity and giving things time to really show themselves.
Hmm. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And it's kind of like going to court. You don't want to put someone in jail if you don't have enough evidence for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and listen, I absolutely support setting boundaries, and there are times when we really do need to cut people off,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But don't you want to be sure first before throwing them in jail?
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes it is more obvious. Obviously, if there's violence or some more obvious signs, of course, you want to protect yourself, but I think we're talking about the more ambiguous situations where
Mm.
you're just not sure if it's you or me, and we want to get that evidence first.
This is really powerful. And I can see how this conversation right here, just that one piece alone, can be so powerful for women who are out dating. They're like, oh, he ghosted. Oh, he didn't get back. Now I'm going to go into protective mechanism next. And it's like there could be a great guy in front of you, a great person in front of you that you're not even aware of because you're lacking the curiosity and openness to find out. And so, shifting it just a little bit, what should we look for when we are out there dating? Like, what are some of the green flags and things that we want to look for, have an alignment before going deeper with someone?
Oh, such a good question. Yeah, so there's a lot that you don't want, and there are things that you do want. So when it comes to, and should we talk about men specifically? Like maybe that's more, yeah, in general to your audience. So this can apply to both genders, but I like
Absolutely.
to play with like fun acronyms and words when it comes to
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I kind of generally speaking, there are three categories of guys, right? So we have like the secure Prince Charming, which is what we're looking for. And then we have the Peter Pans, and then we have the big bad wolves.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so
I love fairy
Secure
tales.
Prince, Peter Pan,
Yeah.
and the Big Bad Wolves.
Yes. Now it's easier to talk about the bad guys first. And again, I'm just using these words out of jest. No one is good or bad. It's just
This
for
is
fun.
so good. I love this. I'm not going to
Yeah.
forget this.
Yeah, so the Peter Pans are the type of guy who are like really on that left spectrum. They don't take responsibility, they don't want to grow up, they can't commit, they just can't seem to get their shit together, right?
Mhm,
And so they actually play to women's motherly instincts. And they make us want to take care of them and enable them and put in all the effort, right? So that's like the first type of guy in that category.
mhm,
And then we have all the way on the other side of the spectrum, we have the big bad wolf. So these are the guys who might appear to have it all together, but they're very hard, right? So they might be very angry and loud, might be more overtly abusive, might be more overtly narcissistic, don't have time for you, have hard rules, right? So again, kind of on the other side of the spectrum. So it's kind of like too soft and too hard, and either of them create toxic relationships for us. So what we want to look for is someone who is in the middle. So the Prince Charming who um, is kind but also has boundaries, right? Who has is calm to be around, but also has their own life going on, right? They have their shit together, but they also have space for you. So there's a harmonious balance between you and them. And that's what ultimately makes a great relationship is really that balance. So the way that it all connects back to the inner child is, well, you kind of have to get your own shit together first, right?
yeah.
Before you're even open to someone who's vibing on the same wavelength as you. So, do you have your stuff together and do you have your own boundaries? Yet you can also create space to invite someone else in,
Mhm.
right? So there's that balance happening there. So yeah, that's your Prince Charming.
I love that. This is so good. So we got Prince Charming, Peter Pan, and the Big Bad Wolves. So this is
Yeah.
a really good thing to look out for. You're on a date, or maybe you start going on a few dates with someone. And you're like, like that person's a little bit harsh. You can start to kind of categorize them in these
Yeah.
buckets. And one of the things that you shared, you have a program, and I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but in your program, you talk a little bit about your comfortability or your tolerance with
Mm,
essentially how long you can date someone before it's exclusive and the different stages of dating. Would
yeah.
you be able to break that down for us? Because as I was taking your program,
Oh, so oh, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
6 months ago.
That's
I think it
right.
was in your program that you talked about this. You talked about
Hmm.
tolerancy for what can you tolerate. And I just thought it was so powerful because you're like, yeah, you might be able to tolerate being with someone for months and it not being an exclusive where you're both dating other people, you're keeping it open. Whereas others, it's like after 3 or 4 dates, we're exclusive. It doesn't mean that you're
Yeah.
boyfriend, girlfriend, or in committed relationship, like we're all in that way, but they're all in of like, we're not dating other people at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about what
Hmm.
that is and also how to identify and have those conversations? Because I know people struggle with this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so as my sister, I did gift Deidre access to our flagship program, Soulmate. So that is like the reprogramming container that I hold for women. So I think you're talking about the window of tolerance, right? When it
That's
comes
it.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. So this is especially helpful for women who are like a little bit more on the anxiously attached side. And there's something called premature attachment. And it's when we get way too invested in someone before we've even determined whether they're a great fit for us, right? Because it comes from this deep need to be seen and to be connected. And so what you can do with the window of tolerance is really to help yourself figure out how long can I be in this dating period before I need confirmation of someone's commitment,
Mm,
right? And the reason I put that in there is everybody is a little bit different, meaning that if you are more on the anxious side, you shouldn't be with someone who's like super avoidant, who could go like 2 years without committing, right? That would make your nervous system so dysregulated that there's no potential for a healthy relationship to start. Meaning that if you can only tolerate, let's say, 4 months of no labels, right?
mhm.
And after 4 months, you start to get really, really anxious, then that should be something that you look for. So my whole thing is kind of work with what you got, right? And you can practice stretching it out. If after 3 weeks I start getting really anxious, maybe I can work on stretching that out to 4 weeks. But it's really understanding how you're wired so that you can meet someone who's really compatible with you. So I'm definitely more on the like I want to know right away that you're not seeing other people and that monogamy is what makes me feel very safe,
Mhm.
right? And so I found someone who is the same as me, right? And so once we can get past that basic foundational feeling of safety, then we can actually move on and progress the rest of the relationship. So the way you do this is you actually the simplest way is just to ask yourself, when I'm dating people, how many dates can I go on with someone before I start to get really anxious about whether they're seeing other people or not? Is it 3 dates? Is it 6 dates? Can I stretch that out a little bit? And that's your window. That's your window of tolerance.
This is
Yeah,
so good
that's
because
it.
so in your program, you also, the program's great, by the way. I haven't taken every
Thank
single
you.
module, but I definitely did go into some of them and I was like, oh, I want to learn about this. And there's a lot of information in there. And so with that, I feel like a lot of women would be uncomfortable asking if we're exclusive or not. And the different stages of dating, from what I remember from the program, and please come in and correct me and define it a little bit more, but stage one is like, do I like this person? Do I want to get to know them? Okay, I do like them. Okay, my tolerance for commitment or exclusivity so that I feel safe, so that I can be myself and continue. Well, I want some sort of exclusivity. Doesn't mean we're boyfriend, girlfriend, or girlfriend, girlfriend, or whatever the relationship is in that form, but it's like we're both deciding that we're going all in on learning each other and seeing if
Yeah.
this is something that we really want to take to the next level. Can you talk about those different stages of commitment
Yeah, of course.
so that, because I just, it's
Yeah.
so powerful.
Yeah, it's a very important distinction. A lot of people, they don't know the difference between actual commitment and being exclusive, but they are actually different stages in dating. So at the beginning, it's just exploration, right? We're going on dates and kind of getting to know people. But then after that, we have, so that's the first stage, right? It's just dating, putting yourself out there, just seeing what you like. And then the second stage is exclusivity. So that's when we're kind of getting to the point of saying, hey, you know what? There's potential here. So we're not going to look for other options right now and focus on exploring this connection that we have here. Right.
Hmm.
So that's kind of in the modern age when people say I've deleted the apps,
Right.
right? That there's something here that I'm going to explore, and that's the exclusivity stage. Now, between exclusive and committed, we do lay out 8 different milestones that you have to go through first. Because here's the thing, when you commit to someone, you're essentially saying, I accept all of you that you've presented to me, right? And we're accepting that person at that point. So
Hmm.
you want to make sure to that you're experiencing that person in all different aspects of life to get like a 360-degree picture of who they really are,
Hmm.
right? So as part of those 8 milestones, it includes milestones like how do they react when you're sick, right? When you're not feeling well, like because that's going to happen in life. How do they react to you? Um, how are they around their friends versus when they're alone, right? So you want to really know the person
Hmm.
deeply. And then when you get to the commitment stage, right, that's when you're committed, right?
Hmm.
That you're partnered at that point.
Perfect. That's so great. Wow, I feel like there's so much information you've shared already, and this is so powerful. And yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the inner child healing. And I think for so long in my own life, I've done a lot of, yeah, I'm certified in all these things. I have all these modalities to help people move through things, but I never really understood or knew what inner child healing was. And to be honest, from a place of not understanding it or yeah, just lack of education on it. I internally thought I was like, oh, inner child healing. Like I kind of thought it was like meh. And this is me years ago. But
Yeah.
so if there's anyone listening right now and they're like, oh, inner child healing, like can you talk a little bit about what it really is and why it's important to do when wanting to have quantum shifts in our relationship to self and also others?
Girl, I was totally there too. Like it was like the last thing I checked out because I heard that and I was like, this is some new age bullshit. Like what the hell is that? It's like it like I don't blame people. It sounds really weird. Right? Like if you're not accustomed to that world, it sounds really hokey and I get it. I don't hold anything against anyone who feels that way.
Right.
That being said, it's a metaphor. It's not a real child inside us, and it's not as basic as like, oh, I'm gonna rewatch Barney tapes, yay, my inner child. It's it's so much more than that, Deidre, and even up until recently, I'm still realizing deeper truths about the inner child.
Mm,
So this is my newest definition. I haven't really shared anywhere else because I had a working one, but this is like the newer truth I've come to understand. Inner child, your inner child was the version of you that was part of God. It's the root essence of who you were before the traumas, before the conditioning, before the rules from society, from your family, from your culture. It was the purest state that you arrived in this life
mm,
before you separated from God. That's what it really is.
mm.
And it's healing the inner child. It's like an excavation project. We're just peeling away the layers to uncover who you are, right? And rescuing that child. Because when people tap into their inner child, like what I've seen from my clients, they're not just tapping into this like pure angelic angel child. They're also tapping into that sassiness that they
Mm.
once held, like this the silliness, the craziness, the mischievous, what do you, I don't know how to pronounce it. Mischievity, whatever it's called.
I'm like, you're messing with
It's
my
like
brain. I'm like, how do I say that right now?
you know what the word is.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
this pure part
Mm,
of us that has been like knocked out of us or buried away, right? Like the
mm,
pure creative energy. That's what it really is. And
mm.
it's think about it in relationships. What is the most common pet name for our partner? It's
Babe.
babe. It's babe.
Yeah,
Baby.
yeah.
When other call we call our partners Poppy,
Oh,
Daddy. Like
right,
that's not an accident.
right.
we when we feel safe in relation, we can return to that essence of who we were.
Mm,
Yeah, that's it.
mm. That is really powerful. And right away, as you were sharing what healing the inner child really is I remember this moment when I was living in Bali, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, and I was at the villa I lived at, and I remembered a moment in time when I stopped believing in God. And I was probably like
Mm.
5 or 6 years old, and someone that I'm related to was struggling with their mental health. And it was very traumatic for me to witness them struggle with their mental health as a child.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, in the villa in that moment, nothing significant was happening around me, but it was just this download of that's when I stopped believing in God. And so about
Oh.
5 or so years ago, roughly when I was in Bali, I already had all these direct experiences with like angels, God, the divine, my intuition. I was already very tapped into it, but there was like this remembrance of, oh, that was the moment I stopped believing in God, and that was the moment where I started to believe I it wasn't safe in this world
Mm.
to be me, and it wasn't I couldn't relax. And so the fact that you just said that right here right now, I'm like, that feels so true.
Mm. Deidre, I have you to thank because I've really reopened and strengthened my relationship with God. Actually, so much due to Deidre because she actually introduced me to this amazing church here in Vancouver. So funny enough, my family was atheist growing up, so I've never actually gone to like a full service, right? Like I don't have any of that indoctrination, any of the of that past organized religion experience. And so it was coming into this for the first time. I had this amazing experience in that church, your church, Deidre, and it really has been helping me kind of like piece together the rest of this puzzle for me. So I want to thank you for that.
Mm. I had a vision a long time ago around that. I've had all these very direct experiences with the divine, and it feels like, okay, now it's time to really share that more openly in my work again, because I did for years and then
Yeah.
I kind of stepped away from it because I think I was kind of going through some stuff or whatever. And it's like now it's time to bring it all the way back. So I always appreciate and love our conversations, and I'm so grateful. So, as we start to wrap up the conversation, I know we could talk for hours about this, easy, and I'm sure we'll have you back on the show and definitely as a
Of
speaker
course.
at one of the upcoming summits. But actually, before we go to your freebie that you have for everyone that everyone should be downloading and jumping on right away, is I'd love to hear from you. How was, when you think of the term awakening her, what does that
Mhm.
mean to you?
I had a great answer at your event and I totally forget. I'll have to come up with one from scratch. But no, it's everything that you're doing, Deidre, I think is so important for healing humanity and for women. So at this point of my life, when I hear your message, when I hear about awakening her, to me, it feels like a remembering of who we really are,
Mhm.
right? A remembering of a deeper truth that underlies all the work we do, no matter what discipline you come from.
Mm.
Remembering.
Mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. And then one more question that I have for you before we get into your
Yes, of course.
is we are planning the upcoming Awakening Her Summits, one in Vancouver and one in Toronto, and dates are going to be released actually pretty soon with the location. So, actually, when this podcast is coming out, we'll probably have the dates and early registration for the summit. Who is the summit for? And yeah, like what was your experience of being a speaker and just being in that room?
Oh my gosh. The energy was like there were so many crazy synchronicities happening with the women who attended. Just like stories that would blow my mind. Like it was next level, right? Like there really was some sort of big energy in that room. And I spoke to a lot of women who attended who had major breakthroughs in their business, in their personal life. Unbelievable, Deidre, this energy that you created. Unbelievable. But it is really for women who are seeking truth and who are tired of playing small and who are ready to answer that calling, right, for their next level, whatever that may look like. I really think it will appeal to women who are kind of on that cusp, right? And they want to connect with other powerful, but also lovely and sweet women because friendship is so important. And there was a lot of friendship at that event. So, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. So, we will be dropping the dates and all of the things very soon. So if you're
Yeah.
listening to this right now, go to the link below and there will be landing pages to sign up for the upcoming summit. Gloria was one of our amazing speakers at the last one, and I'd love to have her back for the next
Yay.
one, either in Vancouver or Toronto. We're both
Yeah.
depending on your flow.
Yeah,
But
trust me, guys, you really want to go. I was there not just as speaker, but I was also an attendee on the other day, and it was incredible. Like you guys have to go.
it was such a powerful experience. And so you have this incredible freebie for us, and I think it's everyone here. If you are looking to be in a powerful relationship and you're looking to call that in, you should absolutely download it. The link is below. Can you tell us a little bit about Attract the Right Man freebie that you have for us, the gift that you have for our audience today?
Yes, I'm so excited to share this with your audience. So, this was actually my most popular masterclass that I've ever run. And it went away for a while, and everyone was emailing me like, Gloria, where's the masterclass? So at this current time, we've actually made it free for
Amazing.
everyone to attend. Yeah, so it's about 40 minutes long. And this was a masterclass I taught where I actually go through, right, the feel, heal, the three stages of how to heal your inner child and attract the right man into your life, like a healthy, secure man. We touch upon a lot more in detail about the Peter Pan versus the big bad wolf versus the secure man. So a lot of the things that we discussed in today's podcast, I go into much greater depth in this masterclass. So, yeah, the link is below if and you guys should check it out.
It sounds amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. And for
Thank you.
anyone who's wanting to connect with Gloria, follow her on social media, get her book, go to her website, all those things, all of the links are below. Thanks again for being here.
It's been my pleasure, Deidre. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Awakening Her podcast. I hope that you got value from the conversation today with Gloria. If you did, please go ahead and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. Go ahead, click the subscribe so you get notified every week when a new episode drops. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and write us a review and take a screenshot of it and send it over to our email at hello@radicallyaligned.com. When you do that, we're going to send you a free copy of my book, Turn Your Light On, which is all about waking up to the truth of who you are and who you're meant to be so that you can get out of your own way and step fully into your dreams. I hope that you have a beautiful day, sending you lots of love, and I look forward to dropping the next episode with you next week. Mwah.